Good evening, everyone. I'm Mark Turner, representing the Rhine tonight. Thank you for being here for this wonderful talk. So I met Angela back in 2006 or so at the International Remote Viewing Association, where she did a talk, and I got to say hello, and I realized that she was just a very warm person who knows what she's talking about, and she had some interesting points to make during her presentation. So she's been doing remote viewing for quite a long time, and 30 years actually, to be exact, in the fields of parapsychology and remote viewing. Last year I took her master remote viewing class, really enjoyed it, learned a lot. She worked for 5 years at the Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Lab, the PAIR Lab, famous PAIR Lab, doing parapsychology research. She was trained by Paul H. Smith and Lynn Buchanan, two of the original military remote viewers from the Stargate program. She's a founding member and former director of the International Remote Viewing Association, has a PhD in psychology from Saybrook Graduate School, master's from Manchester University, and her bachelor's in psychology from Cardiff University in Wales. She's written 8 books now, and I'm really honored to welcome you and to introduce my good friend, Dr. Angela Thompson-Smith. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. I'm glad you're here to hear my talk. And what I'd like to do is to start off just telling you a little bit about what remote viewing is all about. I'm very interested in putting remote viewing to work. There is research, there are research levels, there are training levels, but I'm very interested in what can we use remote viewing for? What is it all about? So, as Mark has nicely introduced me, I'm Angela Thompson-Smith, and I've worked in the parapsychology remote viewing field for a long time, and over 30 years of research. 5 years working at the PAIR Lab, and what I will talk about today is putting remote viewing to work. I'm the author of multiple books, and I've written about many of the cases that I'm going to present today. What is remote viewing? The term remote viewing was coined by Ingo Swann and Janet Mitchell in the 1970s at the American Society for Psychical Research in New York. It's very much a skill that can be trained, that can be put to use. And this is the definition. What is remote viewing? Remote view, this is the formal definition. Remote viewing is the trained mental ability to access and report in a prescribed protocol information that's accessed via something other than the known 5 senses, using methods and techniques that were developed over 30 years of research. Now, remote viewing has become very formal over the years, but there are many, many methods and techniques that you can use. I really like this Ingo Swann quote that I bring into much of my work. And he said, "For remote viewing to have a more positive influence on our future, it must be found useful at the grassroots level, where goal-oriented individuals can perceive its application for the common good. Only those individuals who have made some effort to understand it as a personal experience will be in a position to comprehend more fully the potential of it. They are the advanced thinkers who will redefine the boundaries of consciousness." And here's Ingo back at one of the IRVA conferences, along with myself and a colleague, Prudence Calabrese. And Ingo was very supportive of much of our work and projects. And I just wanted to add that I would often go into Manhattan and visit with Ingo, and he would bring out many of his projects and papers and books. And so I consider myself not having a training with Ingo Swann, but an informal education. IRVA, the International Remote Viewing Association, was formed in 1999 as a way to consolidate some of the various training methods and trainers that were around at that time. We met in Alamogordo, New Mexico, and in 1999, and at Lynn Buchanan's house, and in a meeting where we all discussed what we needed to happen in the organization, the society was set up. So the initial members and directors were there. Robert Knight, a famous photographer, took our portrait, which has become a classic now, and that's our motley crew. Standing left to right, Hal Puthoff, David Hathcock, John Alexander, Lynn Buchanan, Skip Atwater, and myself, and Marcello Truzzi, who was our honorary skeptic of the group, and then seated left to right, Russell Targ and Stephen Schwartz. So 2020 will be our 21st anniversary of IRVA and the formation of IRVA, and I'm very honored that we've got this far. This is also at Lynn Buchanan's house in Alamogordo, and this is the first meeting after 13 years for Russell Targ and Hal Puthoff. They had they had finished the program at SRI and had not been working together for all those years. So they were meeting up for the first time. This is them exchanging their business cards. And you can see lots of orbs around in the room, which I found very interesting. Russell Targ gifted his nonprofit to IRVA, which became established as the International Remote Viewing Association, or IRVA. And Hal Puthoff is a scientific advisor to IRVA and continues to support the organization. Some of the remote viewing methods. As remote viewing went through the various programs, it changed direction and new methods were designed to find out what remote viewing could do, how best to use remote viewing. So there were the outbounder protocols at the ASPR. SRI brought in continued with the outbounder, scanning by geographic coordinate, Project Scan8, encrypted coordinates, and Ingo Swan and Hal Puthoff then decided that they would put together a more formal sequential training called Controlled Remote Viewing, or CRV. The military took CRV and added it onto their extended remote viewing training. And the Pear Lab was doing something comparable. I'd learned recently that they were doing a civilian equivalent of what the military was doing with their remote viewing program. Pear was also doing precognitive remote perception, remote viewing being done before the event or the trip was actually designed or arranged or date agreed even. So the viewers, weeks or months in advance, would be remote viewing events or trips that hadn't even been planned and correctly remote viewing them, which was modeling. And this was what the viewer perceived. Water, started describing water, a person, the person suspended in the water, floating. Sometimes they're that simple, but if you're looking for a missing person, you're looking for a body, say, and that comes up, that gives you an idea whether to look on land or look on water. This would look in water. Now these were bathers in a pool, but this gives you a good idea. In application work, so the viewer was completely blind in this. The only information this viewer had was that alphanumeric, the coordinate. In applications work, the viewer is sometimes given minimal front loading, such as the target's a location, describe the location. So there is a little bit of difference in the working of these targets.